I am going to be talking today about the blog that I wrote following Stephanie Hunter's episode. Stephanie Hunter's episode really awoke in me another area of my life that needed to be healed, that I would call it a partial secret. Go to embracinglayers.com to see the blog in full. This will give you context to what I'm talking about. And you can also find information on it at Embracing Layers on our Instagram. It posted a couple of days ago. But I felt like I really wanted to spend some time going through the talking points and hoping that by hearing this story and how I arrived in this moment of needing to move this boulder in my life for more healing, that it'll help other people out there move boulders that they need to move. The way Stephanie's story inspired me to help me know. I did not really see this coming. I knew that it was an area I was going to be addressing in my therapy. As I told you in the introductory episode, that this journey for me started 2 years ago, and it is a journey. It's an ongoing thing. I have not arrived. I've done some healing, but a lot of times we talk about being on the other side of things. And I would say I'm in a completely different place and have completely different awareness. I haven't experienced an onward healing, but I'm not sure I believe in the whole other side piece anymore, because I think we're just constantly learning and growing. So I view that differently than I did 2 years ago. And this is just another piece of my journey that has been exposed. And the whole point of this podcast is for us to take the lid off of things that have been taboo to talk about and get each other talking about them, feeling confident talking about them, not feeling scared or worried or like it's inappropriate to talk about them, making these things mainstream, I guess you'd say, and self-care and emotional health and boundaries mainstream. And so it's kind of up to me as the host of this to live up to that myself. So when I have experiences that I feel like are part of this subject matter and in my own journey that might be able to help others, then I need to speak to that as well, and not just ask my guests to. So that's what I'm here doing with you today. I'm going to start by sharing my character traits where I'm at today. I am curious. I am courageous. I am conscientious. I am passionate. And I am kind. As always, for more information on this episode, any resources I talk to, anything about me that I'm learning, you can find that in the show notes. You can find that in the sources page, both at embracinglayers.com, as well as links and to all of that stuff on our Instagram at Embracing Layers, where I also will point you to other people that are talking about things that we're talking about and how they tie into our episodes. So great resource there as well. Our first talking point is how to prioritize self-care in your life and what that looks like for each person. So I'm going to speak to each of these talking points in relation to my blog post today. In terms of self-care, I would say in this area, I really didn't fully embrace that. I was always rationalizing why I didn't need to bring it to the light and thinking about other people's intentions, other people's emotional, mental, relational injuries that cause them to be contributors to this, and kind of talked myself out of talking about it or calling it what it was for the trauma that it caused me. And so I kind of neglected my self-care in that area. I didn't listen completely to my body and what it was telling me about what this was doing to me. And what really got my attention is that realization that it's not about people's intent. Most people don't intend. Obviously, there's people out there that are not well, that intend to do harm. But so many times people don't intend to do harm, but it doesn't mean that the harm's not done. And it doesn't mean that there's not some trauma left to deal with that doesn't affect you. And so really, me realizing that I'm not going to be able to fully heal until I talk about this for the harm it did to me and really expose that and bring light to it so that it can heal, so I can fully care for myself the way that I should be. And so I hope that makes sense. And so anytime you have a secret, or a partial secret, and I say partial secret because there are some people that knew the details of this relationship and my background that I speak of, but there were many people that didn't because I was simply afraid to tell them, afraid of what they would think of me. And so that caused me to kind of carry this around for many years. And whenever you're carrying something like that, it's a burden within you. It affects your body and doesn't make full self-care possible. And so that was one of the things that really came to me is it's self-care for me, seeking all the healing I need for all the trauma, regardless of the inflictor's intent, no matter if they meant to or not. So that is where it's like, if I'm going to really talk about prioritizing self-care, then I have to do it in all areas in my life, not just the areas that are comfortable and not scary to talk about. Confidently setting boundaries. In terms of boundaries around this, for years, I didn't have boundaries. I talk about that in the trailer. For years, there were no boundaries existing for me. And so when you don't have boundaries yourself, you don't respect others' boundaries and you don't ask them to respect yours because you're not even living in a mode that you know that's a thing. And so in terms of what happened to me in this relationship and how people responded to it, if I had been a person that had boundaries at the time, I would have been like, no, well, I would have never been in the relationship in the first place because I would have thought well enough of myself to not be in the relationship. And I talk about that in the blog about, when we grow up in environments that use fear as a motivator rather than our intrinsic value of who we are, and making decisions based out of fear rather than being taught that we are beautiful creations of God, and that value in itself is what we should be making decisions based out of, not a fear of disappointing that God. That the God that I've come to know through this journey, through this process, is not a God of fear and condemnation. This God is not just Father. This God is not just patriarch. This God is bigger than that because God can be anything. This God is anything that I need to be, that God to be in the moment, whether it's father, mother, sister, brother, aunt, grandmother, matriarch, whatever. God, and we put God in a box and we make God scary. Or we make God loving, but only a father. When it says right in the Bible that male and female are made in God's image. So right there, that should tell us that God's not just father, and that boys and girls are not more valuable. One's not more valuable than the other. But those are not the things we're told. And so we get caught up in people pleasing and codependency and and living out of fear. And we have no concept of boundaries. So I say all that to say, if I'd had boundaries or known what they were, none of these things would have occurred. The boundaries I have laid today is, as I have released this blog, I gave people that I'm in contact with in my life that are either referred to or affected by this a heads up, this is coming. But I also stated, I out of respect, I want you to know this is coming. I don't want the first time you see this to be when I publish it at the end of this week. At the same time, it's not up for debate. This is my story, my experience. This is how it happened to me. This is how I experienced it. So I'm not up for having a conversation or a debate about what's in it. I'm just letting you know it's coming. So I set that boundary right away. This isn't up for discussion. You're not going to change my mind. This is how it impacted me. This is the trauma that happened as a result. I'm accountable for my decisions and how I landed here, but there's also no denying that things that happened within that in response and reaction towards me did damage. And I have not exposed that to the light or allowed that to heal for all these years through the shame and that came out of it. And so I'm exposing it now. I'm talking about it. I'm calling it what it is. And I want you to know that it's there. I want you to know that I understand, and most of your intentions were never anything to be harmful, but harm did happen. And now I'm dealing with it, but I want you to know ahead of time, but this is not up for debate. So that's a boundary that I laid. And I think that's really important for us to remember, is that I had a great conversation with my therapist earlier in the week about this. And she's like, this is your story to tell. And you don't owe anyone else anything other than what you feel like you need to do for you to heal. And because I express, out of respect for these other people that are affected, I'm going to release this. She goes, make sure that's the reason you're doing it. You're not doing it to people please. You're not doing it in hope that they'll be okay with it or not. You're not responsible for that. So just make sure your motivation is out of what's best for your health, and then put boundaries around it. And so that is what I've done. But I tell you, audience too, if you're facing these things, have a clear understanding of where you need to lay the boundaries, and make sure that your reasons behind where you decide to share and how you decide to share are coming from a healthy place and are going to promote healing, not inflict more trauma or harm. Taking care of our emotional health as well as our physical health. Well, that's how we got here. I mean, me talking about this relationship that was harmful and the secret that I kept it from some people throughout the years, and how other people in my life made me feel about it when I did talk to them about it, and what that's done to me in terms of codependent relationships, trust issues, intimacy issues that have affected my own marriage, how I feel about myself, what I feel like is quote unquote appropriate and not appropriate, based on some misguided teachings that I received growing up in the Mormon church about sex and how it was talked about, all those things. And so in order for me to heal in all of those areas, I knew that I had to call this what it was, put it out there, open it up, talk to people about it that I had never told the whole truth to before, so that I wasn't carrying that secret or that partial truth. Now they, may or may not be surprised to hear this is how this relationship was. But I specifically never told them certain parts of it because I was worried about what they would think of me. And so carrying that around, like I said, any kind of secret, if you don't expose it, if you don't bring light to it, if you're not speaking the whole truth, you're carrying it in your body, and it's going to show up in all kinds of different ways. And it showed up in all the ways I mentioned before, plus anxiety. So this was very clearly something, even with all the healing that I've done over the last 2 years, this is very clearly something that was still affecting me. And so again, people, if you've got, if you want to have full health, holistic health, you cannot carry anything, be like, that's too hard to deal with. It's going to affect you. You cannot be fully emotionally healthy until you're honest and authentic about your story, about what's happened to you, about who you are. It just won't happen. And they're absolutely tied together. That's why I ended up in the ER 2 years ago, like I talk about in the first episode. And as much as I tried to dance around this one, it just became clear over the last few weeks that this was another boulder I was going to have to move to have that full emotional and physical health. How we can support ourselves and other women living unapologetically. I hope that this is really like my prime motivator for doing this episode, is that it's going to help somebody else quit apologizing for their life. I've spent the last 32 years being sorry and regretting and being ashamed of a 3.5-year period of my life when I was in this unhealthy relationship. And that is not a way to live. I am not unlovable. I am not dirty. I am not unforgivable. I am not shameful. I made a bad decision that came from a lifetime of being groomed to perform in a way that was pleasing to those around you. And that's how I proved my value. So I was groomed to perform however I needed to perform in relationships via my upbringing in my family, via the Mormon church, which I've left many, many years ago. That was the environment that I lived in. And for most of my life, it served me, I thought, quote unquote, well, because I was doing good things to be amenable in these relationships, getting good grades, helping my family with various things, taking care of my brother's household chores, whatever it was that was asked of me, being a good athlete, being good at singing and choir and winning competitions. I mean, all those things. And it wasn't until I got into this unhealthy relationship and the performance that was asked of me was to have sex, that it wasn't until then that the script flipped. All of a sudden, all these good things that I'd done to perform, this all of a sudden became this quote unquote dirty thing. And I say dirty because sex before marriage, I was taught was wrong, dirty, whatnot. And I'm not here to debate that today. But regardless of whether you believe it's right or wrong before marriage, the reasons that I did it were not healthy. It was to keep a relationship. It was to keep someone from breaking up with me. It was to prove my worth. And it was not healthy and should have never happened. But again, groomed to please in relationships. And so spent years feeling horrible about that. Instead of just owning, this is what happened. This is the environment I grew up in. Yes, I made a bad decision. People make bad decisions based on this environment. Not surprising you got there. Forgive yourself and move on. I had not been able to do that because I'd never exposed the whole story to all the people in my life. I'd only told parts of it and kept other parts of it secret because of shame. And that never allowed me to live unapologetically. It made me living in a way that I was apologizing all the time to myself for allowing myself to get there. So my hope is expose this, get it out there, and ladies, learn and embrace those layers. I talk about embracing layers. It's part of it. And I have to embrace my own layers. If I'm going to ask people that I talk to talk about this, if I'm going to have a podcast called Finding Empowerment, Embracing Layers, I've got to live that out fully too. And so this is the area, again, that I'm exposing today, that I'm living out, feeling, which is another question that comes in the talking points that we'll talk about in a minute. But also, ladies, we owe it to ourselves. We are not going to live perfect lives. We are not here to please others. We are here to live our most truest, authentic self that we were created to be, regardless of what people around us tell us, think. We are not here to live out of other people's expectations of us and other people's judgments or shamings. We're here to live out of the ones we were created for, with no apologies, learn from the mistakes, accept the layers, accept all the parts of ourselves, and quit shaming ourselves, and take all that we have and know that it's made us who we are today in all aspects. And I've talked about that, but this is definitely an area where, again, hadn't done it fully. The importance of setting and coming back to your why in everything you do. My why in this is for all the things I've talked about so that I can actually be fully healthy. And again, talking about, my journey and how I got here. And my whole reason for doing this is to help us all as women and men. This story applies to men too, in this case, to live an unapologetic, self-care, emotionally healthy, boundaried life where we're living out of our own expectations and not those of others. And so that is my why in doing this episode today. That is my why in doing the podcast. It's what drives me, so that we can take the shame off these things we've been told are not okay to talk about. growing out of expectations. Oh boy, this whole thing, this whole relationship that I talk about and my whole upbringing was about living out of other people's expectations of what they thought I should be doing and how I could prove my value to them. And so again, exposing this and sharing the full story with people that haven't heard it before or never knew the whole truth is me accepting whatever they're going to think about that, but living out of my own expectations that I owe it to myself to not carry the secret anymore, to not shame myself anymore, to not wish away 3.5 years of my life anymore, and to live out of my best, healthiest expectations, layered self. The next, accepting the layered aspects of ourselves, exactly what I'm working on doing here today. Accepting this layered part of my life that I have wanted to shove under and just put behind me and not talk about. And when in fact, there's a lot of decisions that I made out of this life that I wouldn't have made otherwise. A decision that I made to go to Washington State University came out of this season in my life, where I met my eventual husband, life mate, best friend, partner, father of our children, Brady. That was within this season. I made a decision to go to Washington State and later met him. Wouldn't have happened if otherwise, if other things hadn't played out in this season of my life. So accept those things, see the things that are good that came out of it, learn from the bad, but quit carrying the shame of that. Forgive yourself. God forgave me a long time ago. I had to get to a point where I could forgive myself. And that was in believing that God is who I believe God is today and not the God that I was taught about growing up. And accepting all those layers for who I am and how it shaped me. Cultivating healthy relationships with others. Again, I talk about in the blog a series of unhealthy relationships, not only the 3.5 relationships itself that I'm focused on, but other people in my life and their responses to it. Those relationships weren't healthy either, but they weren't healthy because none of us were emotionally healthy. None of us were healthy due to our own stories, our own upbringings, our own religious patterns, all those things. None of us were healthy. So we weren't capable of having healthy relationships. It's in doing the work, in exposing the lies, in healing the trauma, and in living out of your own expectations and not others, and having healthy boundaries that you are able to be and loving yourself and accepting all the layered aspects of yourself. It's only when you get to that point that you can start having healthy relationships with others. And so again, another important part of this step that I'm taking, and I hope that you will all take to, or if you're not, this will boost you into doing it. What are some practices that I use to process my emotions in healthy ways? Well, a lot of things. And it's really about paying attention to my body, because what I've realized over the last 2 years, and I've even noticed the last few days as I've prepared, as I wrote the blog, released the blog, recorded this episode, started talking about it with close family and my counselor, what was coming up in my body. And so my therapist said, have a plan. Your body's going to respond. This is when you expose information to people that haven't been exposed to it before, especially the people that you care about, that are learning some things about you that you've never told them, your body's going to respond. And so you've got to be ready for that. Have a plan in place, listen to it. And so I really do a lot of different things depending on what my body's telling me. Some days I'm doing a hardcore 20-minute cardio, followed by some yoga, followed by some breathing, followed by some meditation. Some days I'm wore out. I just need the yoga, the stretching, the breathing, relaxing. Other days I just need the 20-minute workout. And then throughout the day, depending on how my body's feeling, I can feel my anxiety in my chest. Anxiety is a major thing that I've dealt with. It's a major product of all this blog and many things in my life that I have experienced, and I can feel it in my body. And that's when I have to regardless of what I'm doing, no matter how busy I am at work, busy I am at home, whatever if I'm with people, not with people, I've got a 2-minute box breathing exercise that I do. Thank you, David Collins at Ives New. I'm referring to you. We work with him at my work, and he introduced me to this box breathing. It's 2 minutes and it just resets everything. So those are some of the things I do. I listen to podcasts that really encourage me. Brene Brown, Glennon Doyle, Lisa Sharon Parker, I'm trying to think of other people, Jennifer Hatmaker. I just listening to those people that have encouraging messages that really ground me, feed me, help me grow and calm my spirit. Those are some of the ways. Sometimes I just go for a brisk walk. So it just kind of depends on what it is my body's telling me that I need to do. How do I live out feel? Well, I'm literally doing it via, again, like I talk about in this blog, just releasing any partial secrets, calling the truth, calling the trauma, and regardless of what the intent or not of people was that were involved, and forgiving myself. And instead of trying to shove this 3.5-year period away and wish that I could do differently, embracing it and seeing the parts of it within it that have contributed to who I am today. And this is a process. I haven't arrived at this. This is just a journey that I am embarking on within this, that I'm just not going to carry this burden anymore. I'm going to embrace those layers. I'm going to find my empowerment within that. And I'm going to live out feel in this way. I've lived it out in other portions of my life. It's time for me to live it out in this portion as well. So we're at the rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish me and 5 words on how I want to feel the next 6 months. 5 activities that nourish me are journaling, doing this podcast, the people that I get to talk to and who I learn from. I did an episode with Stephanie Hunter, and her bravery encouraged me to take this step. So doing these podcast episodes each week and the incredible people I get to talk to, very nourishing for me. Walking, hikes in the mountains, being at the ocean. I can be at the ocean, on the beach, and all of my anxiety, all of my angst, it just washes away. I am at my most peaceful, with a very close second being at the lake. I'm from the Pacific Northwest. We have beautiful, clear lakes that I can see to the bottom. I live in Texas now. I won't get in the lakes here. I'm just saying, yes, they're warmer, but I can't see to the bottom. So I'll take my cold lakes in the Northwest because they're clear and they're clean and I trust them and there's no snakes. So, very close second, Lake Chelan in Washington. My friend Kristen Miller's place, one of my favorite places in the world. The only person that loves that place more is her. Lake Pend Oreille, another gem that my sister friend Stephanie, her family brought us in many years ago, and we've gotten to enjoy that special piece of heaven. So there's some of my just most wonderful, peaceful places. And then traveling, love to travel, especially with my husband, my daughters. Now I have a son-in-law, but yet love travel. Brady and I went to Europe in 2018, and whenever I'm like having a rough day, I just pull up those pictures from that trip, and it just puts me back there. Just love travel, and love that trip. So how I want to feel the next 6 months, especially given all that I've talked about today and reference to this blog and just the journey that I'm on. I want to feel brave. I want to feel free. I want to feel peaceful. I want to feel content. and I want to feel valuable. And when I say valuable, I mean valuable to myself, not based on performance or what other people think, but that I can just fully embrace my intrinsic value without any outside influences. Or not that affirmations aren't great and they encourage us, but if no one else around me was telling me or believing I was valuable, but I would still believe that about myself. And that's what I mean about that. Thank you so much. Again, for context, go to the blog. It is titled Reflections on My Own Story, follow-up blog to episode 9 with Stephanie Hunter. Listen to Stephanie Hunter's episode. Thank you for your time today, and be brave, people. Move the boulders, expose the secrets so that you can be fully healthy, apply all the self-care, have the freedom, place the boundaries. Your story is your story. Your truth is your truth. No one else gets to decide that for you, and no one else gets to talk you out of that. And remember, trauma happens. People don't have to intend to cause you harm for it to cause you harm. And so that's my last thing. I really, 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 my epiphany in this whole thing was, it's not about the intent of the quote unquote inflictor. I raised 3 beautiful daughters with my wonderful husband, Brady. We together brought in a lot of our own emotional, unhealed baggage to our relationship and to raising 3 girls. We never, ever loved them more than life itself ever meant to do them any harm. But still, from the unhealed places that we were coming from, we still did them some harm. They're still having to work through some things through their own therapies and counseling and help and whatnot. And because Brady and I have been embarked on our own journeys and have been willing to learn, we've stepped away from being defensive about it and are embracing it and are thrilled that they are doing what they need to do to be healthy and owning our piece in it while doing our own work and becoming better and healthier ourselves. And so just remember that as you're walking through that with your own healing and even with other people in your life. And just there's definitely things that I've done in these relationships that I'm talking about in the blog that I know inflicted harm and trauma on other people. That was not my intent, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. So again, your trauma is trauma and it needs to be dealt with, or you'll continue to carry it in your body and you will not be able to be fully healthy the way you were designed to be. So parting words on that. Thank you so much again for joining us today. I hope you'll join us next week and check out embracinglayers.com for more information, for all the episode links. Follow us at @embracinglayers and have a great week.